Hello everyone, Michael Bretti here from Bretti Musical Instruments. I've got another exciting brand new ocarina batch unveiling for this video for the month of October. And this one is particularly exciting in that it is also a brand new key that I have not done before for the ocarina. So without further ado, I'd like to give a first look and listen to batch number 15 of high-end wooden inline ocarinas from Bretti Musical Instruments. So over the course of this video, I'm going to be diving into the background of this development, taking a look at kind of how this has evolved, looking at the woods for this particular batch, as well as giving some sound samples of each ocarina. So this batch consists of two ocarinas. These are serial numbers 40 and 41. This set consists of my first set of E-flat 4 tenor ocarinas. So I have a few alto ocarinas that you've probably seen a bunch of in the past. There's the alto A, the alto G sharp, and the alto G. I've got a couple of tenors, the tenor E4, which is currently one of my favorite sizes, as well as the tenor F4. Now going down a semitone lower, this is the kind of next in the line, which is the tenor E-flat 4. So a little bit deeper tone than the current tenor E4s, with a bit more of a different response than the E4, which I will get into throughout the video. So kind of going into the background of this development really came about from my push to start going into deeper ocarinas. So as of this video, these are the currently deepest key that I have done yet for the ocarinas. However, I have not unveiled my new bass sizes. So I actually have two new bass sizes that have already been complete. They're literally on the drawing racks right now as of releasing this video, and those will be actually coming out in the next month or so. So I've got a whole bunch of bass ocarinas. But to get to that stage, I really wanted to step my way down. So step my way from the altos to the tenors to the basses, and eventually lower too. So like I mentioned before, prior to this video, the deepest ocarina that I had released was the E4. Originally this size, based on the dimensions that I had made and kind of my guesses for the scaling, this size was originally supposed to be a D. So it was a natural progression to go from the F to the E to the D. During the voicing process, however, I actually found that the breath curve that was resulting from this was a little bit too low. It was lower than I prefer. So I made the decision to voice these up higher semitone to the E-flat 4, and that actually ended up working out pretty nicely. So in fact, because these were meant to be the key of D originally, the size of these is actually noticeably larger than the E4. My progression has kind of stepped up in pretty even steps from my altos to my tenors, but this one is kind of a bit of a larger jump in terms of length and width compared to the E4. So for the resulting D4s, which will be coming up at some point as I work that size out, they will be more similar to this size, but again a little bit larger and deeper to account for that increased depth in the scale. And one thing about the ocarinas is that the scaling really for the chamber volume size is not linear. On the high-pitched end, I feel like I've been able to get pretty consistent for the response that I want in getting the steps pretty even. But as I found, as I go deeper and deeper, the scaling becomes more tricky. So there's a lot more trial and error involved in making these deeper sizes as I go down the scale. So again, this kind of was an unexpected key. It was supposed to be a D, but it ended up being an E4, E-flat 4, working out quite nicely. The biggest thing, which I'll probably get into going more into the individual voicings of each of the ocarinas is the response. The E4 is currently one of my most softest breath ocarinas. Just the way that the sizing works out, and the voicing and how I go into that development. It ends up being a much more subdued key, more so than the F and the G and the A. But the high notes on that has really sweet, rich voicing, and it has this unique timbre to it, that I particularly like for that size for the lower breath curve. This, however, based on how it ended up voicing up, the breath curve is much more, I would say, robust than the E4. So it's actually a bit opposite to the E4, where the E4 is very subdued, and you have to restrict yourself on the breath a little bit to get like this really subdued but rich timbre. The E flat 4s have turned out to be a much bolder tone, so you can push them a little bit harder. They're definitely louder, but they still have this nice warmth and richness to the tone, with a little bit more airiness to the tone. But they are a nice contrast to the E4s in that they can be pushed harder as a more stronger, robustly voiced wooden tenor ocarina. So kind of jumping right in now to the woods, we're going to take a look at ocarina serial number 40. So this batch consists of 3 woods. First, I'll get into the back of the ocarina, because that's usually what sets the foundation for my builds. So the first wood used in this build is ribbon stripe sapele. So you can immediately see just this beautiful iridescence, this beautiful vertical iridescence going down the body of the ocarina. So you can see how it moves really nicely in the light. A lot of times the iridescence and curl in woods, like for maple or walnut, especially for ocarinas that I've done in the past, actually cuts perpendicular across the grain. So the grain is usually vertical, and that figuring for typical curl, like flame or tiger type or fiddleback curl, cuts perpendicular across the grain. For ribbon striping, however, that iridescence actually follows the grain. So you can kind of get the sense that these long bands of iridescence in the ribbon striping is kind of like this really nice, these nice ribbons of almost a satin gloss type silk running down the body of the instrument. So I've used sapele before in one of my custom builds. I used this amazing master grade quilted sapele for a top. I ended up getting a really good deal on a whole bunch of boards of ribbon striped sapele. One of my suppliers had a bunch of large boards for, again, a really good price. So I snagged, I think, 3 of those boards. And I actually have been using those for the development of a lot of my larger ocarinas. So there's going to be a lot more of this ribbon stripe sapele for the bodies to come in my next sets. So if you like this wood and are interested in some deeper keys with this wood, there is definitely a lot more to come. So again, taking a look at that really beautiful vertical iridescence that pairs nicely, I think, with this larger ocarina. I think for like a ribbon type iridescent striping, it really plays nicely into the longer vertical structure of these larger tenors and larger bass ocarinas. So now moving on to the second wood. This is a wood that I've showcased a lot in the past, and one of my personal favorites. This is wenge. So it's not a figured wood per se with the iridescence in the grain, but it just has this really beautiful, rich coloring, this dark black streaking alongside this rich brown streaking that creates for this really nice mottled effect. I use this extensively for laminated stripings, because I think that dark banding contrasts with pretty much any wood you can pair it with. It looks really great with everything as an accent. But I also think the grain is beautiful enough on its own that it should really be showcased as a main wood itself beyond just the typical accents that I do. And eventually, one of these days, I do want to do a wenge body. I haven't gotten to that yet, but I think that is definitely on the plan. I think that would be really cool to make a wenge body. It's a very hard wood. It's pretty dense. You can see it polishes absolutely beautifully. You can see that the gloss of the hand rub varnish is just, it's just a mirror. It looks absolutely beautiful, has this beautiful modeling. And when I saw this sapele, kind of this nice, rich, medium brown, I knew I wanted to pair it with a darker wood. And the first thing that came to my mind was wenge. I thought this would pair really nicely with the lighter wood. And I actually did kind of a similar theme. I did a set of alto A4s with a nice dark wenge top and a really light mulberry body. So I think, again, that contrast with the really dark wenge with a lighter wood on the bottom really plays nicely into kind of this combination of the woods, because you kind of have this lighter brown that kind of accents the lighter brown here, and then you have this rich dark black modeling of the grain that really pops against that lighter brown, gives it a nice nice classic look to it. Finally, we have the aromatic cedar mouthpiece. So again, this is pretty typical for a lot of my standard batch ocarinas. Again, just really nice mouthpiece material overall. Very straight grain, beautiful for one of the best woods in the world for moisture control, especially for windways. So I love using that for the ocarinas. That's really, this and redwood are the only woods that I actually use for the windways because they are so good at moisture control and stability. Now, to give a sound sample of the ocarina, I'm just going to play up and down the full scale for you to get a idea of what the E-flat 4 sounds like. So this is what number 40 sounds like going up and down the scale. So again, like all my ocarinas, this is voiced to have really warm, rich tone at the low end, really clear high end. They all have a really nice resonance, especially on the left hand going up that scale. There's some really nice resonance spots. Just overall beautifully voiced. Again, it's stronger. You can push the low notes harder than my typical E4. So the E-flat 4 has turned out to be a stronger voiced ocarina. And in the process, I had considered maybe for the next batches kind of scaling it back, tweaking the body a little bit to reduce the the breath on the ocarina. But now that these are actually done and I've had a chance to play around with them, I really like kind of that stronger tone for this particular key. So I'm probably going to keep this stronger tone for the E-flat 4s moving forward. So the breath curve is kind of similar to my prior ocarinas, where it starts out kind of a little bit on the low side and rises up the range. Again, this can be pushed a little bit harder, so I'd say this is low medium on the low side and kind of medium, not high yet, but still higher than my other ocarinas. So if you want a deeper wooden ocarina that you can actually push a little bit harder, that gives you more volume, this is a unique, I think, combination that plays into that particular voicing quite nicely. So now looking at the second ocarina for this batch, we are going to take a look now at number 41. So again, starting out with the backwood, you have this really beautiful, really straight-grained, iridescent ribbon stripe sapele. So very, very similar figure to the other one. They both have, rich, clean lines, really nice iridescence in that grain, really nice movement in the light. Just makes for a really, really handsome looking wood. Next, you have the wenge top with the just absolutely beautiful polish that the wenge takes. The grain for the wenges for these two are very different. So they have quite different aesthetics to them, and I like to always note the subtleties in the grains between the ocarinas. Where number 40 has more of an open type straight grain that flows down the body. This one actually has this really unique tight grain ripples that kind of go in diagonal bands across the board, cut with these kind of larger dark stripes going through. So for me, when I see this, kind of this really tight ripples, this almost looks like rippling waves coming in into the shoreline. I just think it has that really cool look and effect to it. And typically for the wenge that I've had, a lot of them tend to be kind of like this one, more open with the grain, kind of more straight or larger model type effects. I haven't actually worked with any wenge that has really tight bands of this kind of rippling modeling to it, which I think gives this ocarina a little bit of a kind of unique look. So take a look at that grain one more time. You can again see kind of that rippling moving across from the top, going kind of diagonally to the bottom, where you get kind of that more classic, more open wenge grain towards the bottom corner. And then finally a look at the aromatic cedar mouthpiece. Again, pretty classic standard aromatic cedar. On both of these, on the same exact side, they both have this little patch of sapwood here, so they both have the same kind of look on them for the aromatic cedar, which I think is kind of nice. It was unintentional, but it ended up working out nicely, kind of matching the set aesthetically. So playing this one up and down the scale, I'm going to now play number 41, so you can get a idea of the tone of this ocarina. So the overall response between these two ocarinas, I think, is pretty well matched. The volume is both strong and rich on these ocarinas. There's just some slight subtleties in the response that I do want to note. Not that they're bad, or one's better than the other, but just differences for those who would like to know the differences between these two ocarinas at a more deeper level. So I would say that the character of this ocarina, I'd say the breath curve is a tiny bit lower, so still strong breath, but I would say it has a little bit more flatter response, where this one has a more rising breath curve towards the top. This one has a little bit more gentle breath curve at the top. It also has a bit more crisp tone to it. Both of them have a very crisp tone, being made from very hard resonant woods, but this one has a slightly sharper profile to it, whereas this one feels a little bit more open and airy. So again, in ocarinas, a more open tone, a more focused tone. One is not better than the other. It's just slight differences in the two of these ocarinas. The result of this being a little bit more flatter response at the top is that the final pinky hole for this one is a little bit larger, and I have noticed one of the big challenges going up with larger tenors and larger basses is keeping the final two holes, so the right thumb and the left pinky, from blowing up way out of scale. The other finger holes remain pretty similar. They haven't changed all that much between the sizes, but for some reason, whatever the dynamics are of the voicing for the inlines in particular, those last two holes can blow up really big if you are really not careful with the voicing of the ocarinas. And one of the unique quirks about this particular size that I found was that with the E4s and all the smaller ocarinas, I've talked about this before, but there's kind of this unusual second harmonic effects that happens at the upper end. So if you're not careful with voicing, the inline profile with at least the flat body type ocarinas for the extended range can actually have these strong second harmonic effects on the final couple of notes. So if you underblow the ocarina, if you don't blow enough, you can get a little bit of a whistling to it. If you're not careful with the voicing, that underblown second harmonic whistle can be so overpowering that it completely ruins the ocarina. And that actually is what makes the A4s, my small size, the most difficult size to make by far, in that those second harmonic effects are ridiculously strong for smaller ocarinas. I actually found that voicing the E4s, this was the first size that those second harmonic effects did not actually come about at all, which actually made voicing these ocarinas really nice and smooth. So interestingly enough, it seems like the larger ocarinas don't have those second harmonic effects that the smaller inlines do, that I have to be really careful on with voicing. So it leads for an interesting dynamic. On the flip side, these are still and the bass ocarinas can still be challenging to voice, not from the wenge perspective, having to be super precise, but the finger hole size and the breath curve that I tune it to must be much more precise, because I found the larger the ocarina, the more sensitive it is to that breath pressure change. And again, if I'm not careful with the breath curve, if I don't keep it within a very narrow range, those final finger holes blow up to be way too big. It sounds fine, it still voices and plays clearly, but it becomes very difficult to cover like the final hole with the pinky. This size is still comfortable, I find, for myself. I have pretty thin fingers. The size is a little bit bigger than some of my other ocarinas, but I still find it's perfectly fine to cover with the pinky. It's not out of question. So again, to kind of wrap up the response, I'd say this one is a little bit more open in tone, whereas this is a little bit more crisp. So to kind of give kind of a demonstration back to back between these two, to give kind of an example. And number 41. So playing them back to back, again, the response of both of them is extremely well matched. They are really close to each other. It's just when I get into these videos, I like to nitpick the details to a more extreme level, so people kind of have more of an understanding and appreciation, kind of the subtle nuances between each ocarina and each batch, because each one is handmade, each one is going to be slightly different. So again, they are really, really close, but if I absolutely had to really nitpick, number 40 has a little bit stronger rising breath curve towards the top end, whereas number 41 has a little bit more, a little bit shallower breath curve. I would say number 40 is a little bit more open in terms of its tone. I wouldn't say airy because they playing them both back to back again. I wouldn't say this one is a little bit more airy. I'd say it's a little bit more open, whereas number 41 has a little bit more, a tiny bit more focused tone and clarity at the top end. Both of them, however, are absolutely beautiful ocarinas. Nice, strong, bold tone for the ocarinas that I've made so far. So I'm excited to incorporate this new E flat 4 key into the mix of my standard batches of ocarinas. So that kind of wraps up the overview for these two ocarinas. Now to put things into a more musical context, I'm going to be doing my typical short song demo. So for this demo, I decided to do the Raising Fighting Spirit from the Naruto original soundtrack. So please enjoy this short rendition of the Raising Fighting Spirit on this new batch of E flat 4 ocarinas. So with that, this wraps up this edition of new Ocarina batch unveiling. Again, this is batch number 15 of high-end wooden inline ocarinas. This consists of my two very first E-flat 4 tenor ocarinas, serial numbers 40 and 41. This batch is made from 3 woods consisting of some very beautiful ribbon stripe sapele, some beautiful, really deep mottled wenge, and my classic aromatic cedar mouthpiece. So again, the E-flat 4 set is a bit unique compared to what I've done with my other tenor E4 in the past. I'd say the F4 is pretty balanced along with the G4 and the A4 in terms of strength of tone and volume and projection. The E4 is definitely the most subdued of my ocarinas to date. It's a very refined, subdued tone. Not for everyone, but it gives a very nice tone. And if you know how to play into that and unlock its voicing, it has really beautiful richness to it. It's kind of unique for that size. One of my personal favorite ocarinas is an E4 custom that is in my personal collection. It's one of the softest breath ocarinas I've made, but it has this really beautiful richness to the tone that's quite unique. These E-flat 4s are a bit opposite of that in that even though they're a half step lower in tone, they have a much bolder voicing. So if you really like that richness in the tone, but want something that you can push a little bit more, has more volume, more breath and power to it, the E-flat 4s are a kind of a nice contrast to that. with still a nice good size to show off the beauty of the woods, without being overly large or having overly large finger holes to handle. So if you like these developments and you'd like to follow along more, you can check out the Bretti Musical Instruments Instagram page, Facebook page. I also post pretty regularly on some of the Ocarina group Discord communities, as well as Facebook groups. And right here on the Bretti Musical Instruments YouTube channel, where I have pretty regular updates. I will also say that I am finally going to be launching the website. As of this video, it will be coming out quite literally next week. It's been in the works for a while. I know a lot of people have requested it. It's finally going to be put out there, so keep an eye out for that. I'm probably going to have more details about that at a later date. But that is coming online. That's going to have all my builds to date, so you can see the gallery of everything I've made for all the shun, for all the ocarinas. There's going to be a shop page for all the stuff that's in stock, as well as information for custom instruments, as well as general information on shipping and details for each of the instruments. So if you are interested in these particular instruments or want to follow along more, you can reach out to me through my email or through any of the social media channels that I'm currently on. Stay tuned for a lot more builds, especially as I wrap up this year. I still got a bunch of new sizes coming out, some really exquisite custom stuff. So we're going to be seeing some really amazing bass ocarinas finally in the works to wrap up the year. So it's going to be a fun next couple of months revealing these new ocarinas. So with that, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.